Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. What if I told you that one man's ambition redrew the map of Europe, ended a 1,000-year-old empire, and gave birth to the modern world? This is the story of the Napoleonic Wars, a conflict that shaped everything from national borders to the very idea of what a nation is. To understand Napoleon, you have to understand the fire he rose from, the French Revolution. In 1789, France exploded. The people overthrew their king, demanding liberty, equality, and a new secular society. Europe's other kings were terrified. They saw this revolution as a disease that could infect their own countries, so they declared war on France. From this decade of chaos and war, a brilliant and charismatic general emerged, Napoleon Bonaparte. He promised France what it craved most, order and glory. In 1799, he seized power. And by 1804, he had crowned himself emperor. He wasn't just a military genius. He was an exporter of revolutionary ideas, but on his own terms. A brief peace with Britain collapsed in 1803, as neither side could tolerate the other's power. And so Europe plunged into a new, even more destructive war. The Napoleonic Wars weren't just France versus one enemy. They were France against a series of shifting alliances, known as coalitions. Britain was the constant enemy, bankrolling the war effort with its vast wealth and dominating the seas. On land, however, Napoleon was king. His primary opponents were Austria, Prussia, and Russia, and for a while it seemed like no one could stop him. The first phase of the war, from 1803 to 1807, was a story of French dominance, but there was one major exception. At the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, the British Royal Navy, led by Admiral Horatio Nelson, annihilated the combined French and Spanish fleets. This victory secured Britain's control of the seas for the next century and forced Napoleon to abandon his dream of invading England. If he couldn't beat Britain at sea, he would have to conquer all of Europe on land, and conquer he did. Just weeks after Trafalgar, Napoleon achieved his greatest victory at the Battle of Austerlitz. He masterfully crushed the combined armies of Austria and Russia. The consequences were seismic. He dissolved the Holy Roman Empire, an institution that had existed for 1,000 years, redrawing the map of Central Europe overnight. The following year, in 1806, he turned on Prussia. At the twin battles of Jena and Auerstedt, the once mighty Prussian army was utterly humiliated and its kingdom occupied. Ironically, this crushing defeat sparked a wave of reform and intense nationalism in Prussia, forging a future enemy that would one day help bring him down. Wherever Napoleon's armies went, they brought radical change. He installed his relatives as rulers of new client states and spread the Napoleonic Code, a revolutionary legal system that abolished feudalism, guaranteed legal equality for men, and separated church and state. But these modernizing reforms came at the price of foreign domination, and conquered peoples began to resent their French liberators. Unable to invade Britain, Napoleon decided to strangle it economically. In 1807, he launched the Continental System, a massive embargo designed to cut off all European trade with the British Isles. But it was a spectacular failure. Smuggling was rampant, the embargo hurt his allies' economies more than Britain's, and British naval supremacy allowed it to trade with the rest of the world. The system backfired, breeding widespread resentment. This resentment boiled over in Spain in 1808 when Napoleon invaded the Iberian Peninsula to enforce his system. He expected an easy victory. Instead, he walked into a nightmare. The Spanish people rose up in a brutal, unconventional war of resistance. This was the Peninsular War, and it gave us a new word, guerrilla, meaning little war. For years, Spanish partisans, aided by a British army under the Duke of Wellington, tied down hundreds of thousands of French troops in a bloody conflict that became known as the Spanish Ulcer. It was a constant drain on Napoleon's resources and manpower. More importantly, the resistance in Spain was a sign of something new sweeping across Europe: nationalism. For the first time, people weren't just fighting for a king. They were fighting for their nation, for their shared language, culture, and identity. In Germany, Spain, and Italy, Napoleon's conquests unintentionally awoke a powerful sense of national consciousness that would ultimately prove to be his undoing. The beginning of the end came in 1812, convinced he needed to crush Russia. Once and for all, for defying his continental system, Napoleon gathered the largest European army ever seen. Over 600,000 soldiers from across his empire formed the Grand Army and marched east. It was meant to be his final, decisive triumph. It became his greatest disaster. The Russians refused to give him the quick, glorious battle he wanted. Instead, they retreated deep into their vast territory, employing scorched earth tactics, burning crops and villages to leave nothing for the invaders. Napoleon captured a deserted and burning Moscow, but it was a hollow victory. With no supplies and the brutal Russian winter setting in, he was forced to order a retreat. The journey back was a frozen hell of starvation, disease, and constant guerrilla attacks. Of the more than 600,000 men who marched into Russia, fewer than 100,000 staggered out. The myth of Napoleon's invincibility was shattered. Sensing weakness, his old enemies Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria formed a massive new coalition. In 1813, they cornered him at the Battle of Leipzig, also known as the Battle of Nations. It was the largest battle in European history up to that point, and Napoleon was decisively defeated. The Allies pushed into France, and in 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the tiny island of Elba. The war, it seemed, was finally over, but Napoleon had one last act. In March 1815, he escaped from Elba, landed in France, and rallied the nation behind him for a dramatic comeback known as the 100 Days. The European powers, stunned, quickly mobilized their armies. The final showdown came on June 18, 1815, at a small Belgian village called Waterloo. Here, a combined British and Prussian army, commanded by the Duke of Wellington and Gebhard Vaughan, faced Napoleon for the last time. In a brutal, day-long battle, Napoleon's army was defeated, and his extraordinary career came to a final, definitive end. This time, he was exiled to the remote and windswept island of St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic, where he died in 1821. With Napoleon gone, the leaders of Europe gathered at the Congress of Vienna. To rebuild the continent, their goal was to turn back the clock, restore the old monarchies, and create a balance of power to prevent another continent-spanning war. They redrew borders, creating a German confederation, a fragmented Italy, and a divided Poland, often ignoring the national identities the wars had awakened. But they couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. The Napoleonic Wars fundamentally reshaped the world. Most importantly, they gave birth to modern nationalism, the idea that people should be loyal to a nation based on shared culture and language, not just a king, became the most powerful political force of the 19th century. This idea would lead to the unification of Germany and Italy, and eventually to the world wars. Napoleon also completed the destruction of feudal Europe. His legal and administrative reforms were so effective that even the restored monarchies couldn't undo them. Warfare itself was transformed. He pioneered mass conscription and total war, where the entire nation was mobilized for the fight. War was no longer just the business of kings. It was a struggle for national survival, and globally, Britain emerged from the wars as the world's undisputed superpower, setting the stage for a century of British dominance and global imperialism. This brings us to the great paradox of Napoleon. He was a dictator who crowned himself emperor and suppressed liberty, yet he was also the man who spread the revolutionary ideas of legal equality and destroyed the ancient feudal order. He sought to unite Europe under his imperial rule, but in doing so, he taught the peoples of Europe how to resist empire by becoming nations. The Napoleonic Wars were more than just a series of battles. They were the violent birth of the modern era. They closed the book on a world of kings and dynasties and opened the age of nations, mass politics, and the world we know today. Thanks for watching, and if you found this journey through history interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more.